Jiang is a talented young man known for his exceptional cooking skills and has a reputation for winning every formal cooking competition he enters. Chefs have a tradition where the loser of a competition must give up their ancestral knife and close their restaurant forever, which adds more stars to the winner's rating based on the number of knives collected. Our main character, Nai, is an ambitious chef who works under a renowned chef from a prestigious culinary family in China. It is expected that Nai will eventually succeed as the heir to this culinary legacy. Our protagonist Jiang is pitted against a skilled and famous chef, emerging victorious as always, adding another victory to his total of 23 knives collected from defeated chefs. This reputation has made Jiang a feared and respected figure in the culinary world. Meanwhile, Nai is gaining experience at a 5-star noodle restaurant under the guidance of her mentor. Despite not yet completing 6 months of training, she is eager to start cooking instead of just observing. In addition to her work at the restaurant, Nai also spends her nights working on a food cart to further her culinary education, even though her main job provides a good salary. One day, a stranger approaches her and requests fish noodles. She explains that she doesn't usually make that dish, but he insists on having it. Reluctantly, she agrees to make it for him. However, as she is preparing the noodles, the police raid her cart, forcing her to run away to avoid being caught. The stranger is left disappointed as he never receives his noodles. When he encounters her again, he asks her to complete the dish, but she is forced to flee from the police once more. The following day, Nai requests her mentor to begin instructing her in preparation for completing her 6-month training soon. However, he maintains that she must finish the entire 6 months. She is unable to fulfill the entire 6 months. This is because Jiang had previously provoked her mentor by requesting cooking lessons, which he declined, resulting in Jiang holding a grudge. As Nai's mentor is unable to turn down the challenge, he reluctantly agrees. On the day of the competition, the committee in charge provides the ingredients and instructs the participants to commence cooking. Every contestant begins making the renowned fish noodles taught by Nai's mentor. The mentor requests Nai to hold the knife for him at least once in her lifetime as he is uncertain about the outcome. At the end of the competition, Jiang emerged as the winner with 2 votes to 1, as Nai's mentor's dish lacked proper seasoning due to a health issue that affected his ability to taste flavors accurately. Nai becomes emotional over her mentor's loss due to Jiang's victory. Feeling upset, she confronts Jiang and accuses him of spying on her when he visited her food cart, which he had indeed done, though he denies it. He claims he was merely assessing his student's progress, which frustrates Nai further. She informs him that she plans to seek vengeance and retrieve the knife from him once more. Jiang is taken aback upon hearing her name, as she is his childhood friend with whom he used to play and had been trying to locate for some time. He presents a photo provided by the shelter director and is stunned to realize that it is the same Nai. He is unsure of how to proceed. Nai's mentor informs her that she needs to work at the restaurant as usual today because he plans to close it from the following day. Despite his own personal loss, he tries to conceal his emotions from Nai and acts as if everything is normal, stating that he had intended to retire regardless. Nai and Yen make the decision to reopen the restaurant, even though their mentor will no longer be able to cook or manage it, as Nai wishes to honor his legacy. However, their plans are foiled when customers refuse to come because they were only loyal to the mentor's cooking. Upon learning of this, Jiang visits the restaurant to become the first customer and takes advantage of Nai's offer of free food to the first customer. Despite Nai's initial hesitance, she eventually agrees to serve him. After trying the food, he compliments her cooking and offers to mentor her. Nai refuses, emphasizing the importance of her dignity. However, the restaurant is shut down by the municipality due to negative reviews and failure to meet requirements, leading to Nai seeking help from Jiang, who lives nearby. She is surprised to see him preparing noodles and decides to taste them. Impressed by the delicious flavor, she sadly acknowledges that his cooking is better than hers. Upon completion, she requests permission to depart and leaves in tears, feeling distraught as she is unable to continue without employment. Despite this, she is determined to seek revenge, but also wants to avoid compromising her dignity. She decides to work for him in order to observe and learn how to defeat him. Jiang, aware of her job application, observes her with amusement, as she failed the restaurant's job tests except for the position of warehouse guard. Disheartened, she exits the restaurant. However, she is surprised when notified that she has been hired as a warehouse guard, giving her a glimmer of hope for the future. On her initial day on the job, Nai attempts to assist Jiang in the kitchen to observe and learn from him. However, he publicly humiliates her and instructs her to concentrate on her tasks if she wishes to remain employed. Jiang is told that he will be responsible for preparing meals from the following day onwards, allowing everyone, including Nai, to have the opportunity to cook in the kitchen. During lunch, Jiang confronts Nai and criticizes her for the meal she made not meeting the expected standards. He points out that the meat was improperly cut with a dirty knife, affecting the flavor, and the dish was lacking seasoning and required modifications. Jiang stresses that in a top-tier restaurant, there should be no need for customers to add salt or alter the dish once it is served. At the close of the day, Nai confronts Jiang, informing him that she has reached her breaking point and has made the decision to resign instead of continuing to suffer repeated humiliation. Just as she is about to depart, Jiang seizes her by the collar. Out of the blue, Jiang brings her to a high-end 5-star restaurant that belongs to Jean. As they converse, Jiang discloses that he chose her to be a storekeeper due to her keen sense of smell and talent for recognizing ingredients, a revelation that astonishes Nai since she believed the job to be menial. She is tasked with sampling the restaurant's cuisine and identifying its components, a task she accomplishes with success. Later, Nai stands in front of her teacher's store and comes across Jean, who attempts to convince her to collaborate against Jiang. Nai declines the proposal. When Nai comes back home, she runs into the rain and sees Jiang waiting for her, giving her a comforting cup of tea. Despite his claims that he didn't make it specifically for her, he still leaves it for her to enjoy. Then Jiang tells Nai that he took her to Jean's restaurant as he's going to hold an official competition against her. The next day, Jean proposes to Jiang that they collaborate instead of competing by combining their restaurants into one, but Jiang rejects the idea. The next day, Nai visits the restaurant but discovers it is closed. She encounters Cheng, the owner of Jiang's, who explains that the restaurant closes for 3 days before each competition so Jiang can focus on training. Nai then makes up an excuse and decides to go to Jiang's house, only to find it empty. She calls Jiang, who gives her the password, telling her to wait for him as he buys some ingredients for his competition with Jean. Then he remembers writing his plan about taking revenge on her mentor, and fears that she sees it. But when he goes home, only to discover that everything has been revealed and that Jiang was the person responsible for posting harmful remarks about her restaurant to sabotage it. Jiang explains to Nai that his intention was for her to collaborate with him, and she agrees to assist him in cooking by utilizing her strong sense of smell. She stipulates that he must let her be his assistant during the competition as a condition of her help. Nai and Yen assist in gathering the necessary ingredients, and upon completion, Jiang throws a towel at Nai to dry herself. Together, they practice to cook a dish reminiscent of Jin's father's creation, and after numerous trials, they manage to make an even superior dish. That evening, Jiang becomes extremely tired and collapses, prompting Nai to stay with him throughout the entire night to look after him. The next morning, Jiang awakens to see her next to him and expresses his gratitude for her assistance. They proceed to the competition, where both teams demonstrate impressive skills. Initially, the competition results in a tie, but ultimately Jiang emerges victorious with a unique dish, bringing joy to both of them. However, Jean is feeling very upset because her restaurant is going to shut down, and Nai shows sympathy towards her. Jiang contemplates that if he wasn't the one closing Jin's restaurant, it would have been his own restaurant facing closure due to the law. To change the topic, Jiang mentions an upcoming party they need to prepare food for, which makes Nai happy as she is now a cook instead of a storekeeper. Upon the arrival of the grandfather, he appears furious and grabs Nai by the collar, declaring that his granddaughter Sia will take over the management of all his restaurants, which is different from Jiang's chain. Upon hearing about Sia's comeback, Jiang is taken aback and Nai finds out her father is nowhere to be found, causing her to worry about his well-being due to his Alzheimer's condition. Jiang joins Nai in the search for her father, comforting her, and together they visit a shelter where he was previously employed as a guard. Upon reaching the shelter, they discover Nai's father perched on a tree, unaware of his surroundings. Nai is scared he might fall, but Jiang steps in and safely brings him down, leading to Nai breaking down in tears as she holds her father in her arms. Nai informs her friend Yen that she plans to arrange for someone to look after her father to prevent a repeat of previous events, but Yen declines and insists on taking care of it himself. Yen, who has chosen to work at the zoo, plays a musical instrument there and suggests bringing Nai's father along for a day out. She goes to tell Jiang about it, but when sees his hair wet, she helps in drying it. After Nai finishes and gives the ticket to Jiang, she notices that he seems upset, so she reassures him that he doesn't have to accompany them. However, he insists on coming as usual the following day. Jiang is friendly towards Nai, but his demeanor shifts when he sees her with her friend. During his return journey, he catches a strong cold and is teased by his friend about his emotions towards Nai, although Jiang denies any romantic feeling. His friend doubts Jiang's ability to recognize his true emotions, prompting Jiang to go for a walk to clear his mind. Upon opening the door, he is surprised to see Nai standing in front of him, as she had come to visit him after hearing about his illness. Jiang seizes her by the collar, as usual, and suggests, "Since you're already here, let's head to the hospital." He appears reluctant to display any affection, but once the medical results are in, he acts immaturely. Nai departs at last, but her attachment to him draws her back when the rain begins. The following day, Nai visits the market and encounters Sia, who was attempting to purchase mangoes from a deceitful vendor. Nai assists her and humiliates the vendor. Sia informs Nai that she has recently come back from another country and inquires about a recommended eatery. Nai recommends Jiang's restaurant without realizing that Sia is actually Jiang's cousin. The following day, Nai is filled with anticipation as she will have the opportunity to cook with her colleagues. Suddenly, Seo requests Nai to prepare the meal on her own, even though it goes against the regulations as Nai is not a head chef. Despite Nai's initial reluctance, Seo continues to press until Nai agrees to cook the meal herself. To everyone's surprise, the food turns out to be exceptionally delicious. Seo compliments Nai on her culinary skills, but unfortunately, she faints due to consuming sweets despite being diabetic. Jiang accompanies her to the hospital and remains by her side until she regains consciousness. Seo inquires if Jiang has feelings for Nai, which he denies. Seo's plan succeeded as Jiang scolded Nai for giving her sweets, revealing by her plan how she hates Nai. After being released from the hospital, Nai encounters Seo and notices her sabotaging efforts, sparking a confrontation where Nai asserts that she also has a keen sense of smell. A contest is arranged, with Seo emerging victorious and humiliating Nai in front of her co-workers at the eatery. Feeling dejected, Nai goes back home and confides in her friend Yen, who reveals details about Jiang's family history. It turns out that Jiang's father was a talented chef who competed in secret but ended up losing. Upon learning about the situation, the grandfather evicted them from the house. Following the unexplained deaths of their parents a year later, the grandfather extended an invitation for them to come back to the family residence, but Jiang declined, opting to remain at the orphanage until he could get back on his feet. On the other hand, his sister Seo accepted the offer to live with a relative and be cared for. In due course, it is disclosed that Seo is actually the sister of Jiang, not his romantic partner. Nai is curious about the reasons behind all these events. While they are talking, Jiang discovers a box with an old and rusty knife inside. He takes it and departs. The following day, Nai gets to the restaurant early and begins honing her sense of smell. During lunch, Jiang discovers that his usual meat supplier has stopped doing business with him, so he requests Nai to buy meat from another source. Unfortunately, all the vendors decline selling her meat upon learning she is associated with Jiang. Eventually, she manages to purchase the meat. During cooking, they agree to prepare meals for the orphanage children as a kind gesture, take photos with them, and advertise the restaurant. Jiang reminisces about the times they spent together and how she was the only one who supported and spent time with him. He becomes melancholic as he realizes she still can't remember him. Later, she inquires about the orphanage. Jiang informs her that he was raised there and had only one friend, a girl, whom he prefers not to discuss. In the evening, the orphanage children experience health issues from the food and are transported to the hospital. Consequently, the restaurant shuts down the following day, and the media arrives to look into the situation. Out of nowhere, Jiang steps in to help Nai, draping his jacket over her shoulders and advising her to depart while he handles the press. When Nai comes back home, Yen shows up and disables all phones and internet access to prevent anyone from contacting her. He then informs her that he has a surprise, presenting her with a cooking knife that once belonged to Nai's father. This knife is adorned with stars that symbolize her family's prestigious reputation as one of the 7 renowned cooking clans. Yen assures Nai that she is free to open a 5-star restaurant and compete with Jiang without facing any opposition. Out of the blue, they get a phone call telling them that the children have been released from the hospital. Nai immediately goes to visit them and brings along some gifts. The teacher reminds her that she's happy to see her with Jiang once are grown up, which makes Nai remember that Jiang was her childhood friend. The following day, Nai and Yen began search for a restaurant for Nai to open in her name, but the costs prove to be prohibitive. They search aimlessly until they spot Cheng with the previous chef that Jiang had triumphed over at the start of the series. Nai is taken aback by their presence together. The following day, Yen and Nai observe Cheng going towards a particular location, prompting Yen to trail him while Nai remains behind. The senior chef assembles the chefs whom Jiang had previously defeated and exposes that they switched the initial meat purchased by Nai with lower quality meat, with the assistance of a person in the restaurant. As Yen follows Cheng into the restaurant, he notices Seo walking by and immediately falls in love with her, prompting him to follow her. Unexpectedly, Seo opens and closes the door, preventing Cheng from seeing them. She actually arrived to keep an eye on him, but Cheng spots them and requests for them to go. Simultaneously, Jiang uncovers the reality and finds out that the former chef did it because Jiang had shut down his restaurant. Consequently, he requests for them to provide confessions on record in order to exonerate himself. It is revealed that Cheng had been collaborating with Jiang since the start and visited the old chef to uncover their schemes. Nai went to the traitor chef, who helped in this plan to face him, chooses to utilize gasoline, but Nai sprays him with spices and flees, and Jiang comes to her rescue. They contact the authorities. On the opposite hand, Yen persists in his efforts to impress Seo and endeavors to procure contact information. When Seo comes back home, she encounters the malicious chef, reprimands him, and then puts him in the car and drives around until he is tired. She warns him that if he harms her brother again, she will physically assault him. At the same time, Yen confides in Nai about a person who instantly fell in love with her and discloses that he applied for a job at her restaurant, only to realize that Seo is actually the one he has feelings for, but he reassures her that he will still work for her unless she formally quits within the next month. The following day, Jiang goes to collect Nai for their training session. Upon noticing that she is yawning, he seizes her by the collar and expresses his frustration that she appears to be more interested in sleeping than in putting in the effort. In a grocery store, Seo and Yen come across each other as they both reach for the same bottle simultaneously. Yen informs Seo that he has submitted an application for a position at her eatery, however she informs him that she does not intend to hire him. Despite her rejection, Yen continues to be enamored with her. Nai goes back to work with Jiang and faces consequences for missing the meeting. Later that evening, Yen expresses his admiration for Seo while Nai vents about Jiang. The following day, Seo went to the store again, where the guy tells her that Yen is at the dentist's. She feels worried and goes to check on him, leaving Yen very happy with her behavior. Nai attempts to avoid joining the employees on a trip, but Jiang arrives to collect her from her home. While staying at the lodging, they discover that Seo and Yen have already reached the location. In the meeting, the four of them occupy chairs, while the staff members are crowded together because of the limited space. Nai is dressed in traditional attire, and upon seeing her, Jiang appreciates her beauty and uses the opportunity to engage in some playful flirting by remarking, "I'm just teasing the character, nothing more." The following day, they are tasked with unraveling a puzzle related to the demise of a puppet, with a reward for the first person to solve it. Everyone assembles, and each person shares their nighttime activities, uncovering that Yen was in the company of Seo. Jiang inquires about the details from her, and she explains that he was merely standing outside, lost in thought. When it comes to Jiang's turn, he discloses that he was with Nai prior to turning in for the night. The unknown host then instructs them to explore the forest. While walking together, Jiang struggles with directions and ends up getting lost several times. Eventually, they manage to find a hidden spot, but their ladder is abruptly removed and they stuck inside the place.